The following is brought to you by Digital Shelf Space, producers of GSP Rush Fit and Tour Academy Home Edition. Visit them online at digitalshelfspace.com.
Welcome to Cambridge House Live. I'm Vanessa Collette at the Toronto Resource Investment Conference. I'm joined by Greg McCoach, president of Amerigold.com and editor of The Mining Speculator. Welcome, Greg. Great to have you here with us.
Glad to be here, Vanessa.
Greg, I have to ask, are you still confident in gold?
Absolutely. I've been more confident in gold lately with everything that's happening, this acceleration we see. Even though the gold and silver price have been hit pretty hard, the evidence and the case for gold has never been stronger in my view.
Well, for the uninitiated, maybe we can discuss what gold bullion is and maybe walk me through the process of buying it.
Yeah, this is a question I get often. I'm often surprised at conferences when somebody comes up and says, well, how do you buy physical gold or silver, right? Where do you get it? And I started Amerigold back in 1998 to be a safe and reliable place for my subscribers, investors, friends and family who wanted a place to buy and sell the metals without any sales pressure. And it's worked out. We've been in business 14 years and it's done very well. I believe right now is the time that investors should be really considering. You buy on the dips. You want to buy when it's low, not when it's high. And this is a great chance to get in at low levels, I think. Are we at the bottom yet? I don't know. We could still see further downside, but I tend to believe we're going to start moving to the next run higher, which would make new highs at some point.
What do you think those highs would be?
Well, in the near term, I don't have a crystal ball, but I just say in the longer term, and I'll call longer term 5 years, let's say, I think the inflation adjusted price of gold and silver will be north of $10,000 an ounce. I believe silver will be north of $120 an ounce and palladium $6,000 an ounce. But that's inflation adjusted with the devaluing dollar within a 5-year period.
Right.
What happens week to week, month to month, who knows?
Are there any downsides to actually owning physical gold?
At this point, I don't see any other better investment out there right now. I talk with a lot of people at the conferences and travel around the world and meet with a lot of people. And the general consensus is people are coming to me, Greg, where do I make money? Where do investors turn at this point? You can't put money in a bank because the bank doesn't give you any rate of return. And now there's, risks with holding money in a bank in US dollars or Canadian dollars. I think, overall, gold represents the bedrock of anybody's portfolio that has the least amount of risk given the circumstances we're faced with today.
And where can someone store gold safely in their home? What's the...
Yeah, I would say for most investors, I would say 98% of the clients at Amerigold take delivery. They store it safely. You have to protect it from fire and theft, okay? I always say the first line of defense is to not tell anybody else about this other than a few trusted loved ones. Never let anybody know you've got this.
That's a good
Especially
tip.
your kids.
Yeah.
Your kids go around, hey, my dad and mom,
Yeah.
they got these cool gold and silver coins, right? You don't want that to happen, okay? And there are ways to protect yourself. We have a depository now in Canada here, right outside of Toronto near the airport, that we're using for our Canadian clients, and we use several depositories in the US for our US clients.
Let's talk a bit about gold confiscation. What's the risk of that ever happening again?
That's a really good question. I always try to go and let people know that I think there's very little chance of that happening again. The reason for that is that people often quote the 1933 Roosevelt confiscation, and you really need to understand why that happened. Back then, gold was convertible. Our paper money was convertible into gold and or silver. And at the time, the fourth year of the Great Depression, things weren't getting better, they were actually getting worse. And people started to run on the banks to cash out the paper money they had to get physical gold or silver. Well, to stop that process from happening, Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued his infamous confiscation order, right? Now, they paid people for their metals, but after they paid them for it, they raised the official price by almost double, okay? So essentially, they ripped us off. Now, there's no impetus for a confiscation because our dollar is not backed by anything other than politicians' promises, right? And those are about as worthless these days as anything, but the dollar's backed by nothing. So there's no reason why they'd want to confiscate gold to protect, the dollar.
Let's talk a little bit about the junior space, junior mining exploration companies and development companies. They've been in a really tough spot, but the general market is doing really well. Why is that?
Well, I don't know if you'd say the whole market. There are certain Dow stocks, certain high-flying Dow stocks that are certainly done well, like Apple, things like that. And what's interesting to note is that when the Dow is only made up of 30 stocks, that index, and one of those or more of those companies don't perform well, they take them off the list and they put other high-performing stocks on there.
Interesting.
So I think it's very deceptive using the Dow as a measure of all the general stock market. Overall, I would think investors would say, as I'm traveling around, that it's hard to make money in the general stock market. Our market here has been particularly drubbed very hard in the last couple of years, and we're all feeling the pain from that. But this market will recover, and when it does, I think there's the people who are at these low levels buying in, the quality companies, and you really have to emphasize quality at this point, will do very well.
Why don't we talk about that? What is the definition of a quality company to you?
Yeah, well, first, when you're talking about junior mining exploration companies, it's all about the management teams. But you have to delineate these things. In the junior mining exploration space, there's developmental companies, there's companies that are going into production, and so they each have various levels of risks that you need to, ascertain before you make any investments. The most difficult spot based on our current market is the junior mining exploration space. These companies don't have any real assets. They have to raise money continually to move their projects forward, and there's no real way to do that right now. No one's interested in writing checks to fund these things. So it always comes back to management. If you have a good management team, and I have several companies that I am following right now that are in play because they already had money from before, and they're able to move their projects forward, and they're making a discovery here or there, and they are in play. They can do well.
So what are you telling your subscribers to do right now with their investments?
You just try to realign your portfolio. If you have some dead dogs that need to be removed, you get rid of them, you move on, and you just try to realign yourselves with the best companies you can find that have a real chance. There's a lot of companies hanging on by their fingernails going, oh. But, look for the companies that have real assets that are either discounted heavily in the market that you can buy on a recovery that will bounce back very quickly, or find a discovery within the exploration sector that has money to fund their activities, even if the market stays at a low level for another period of time.
Greg, just as we wrap up, what's your forecast over the next year?
Well, I was hoping for a recovery this fall, but every day and every week that goes by right now, I'm worried that the recovery is not going to materialize. We saw the majors, like I'll take one of my favorites, Endeavor Silver, from early July to August, it went from $3 to $6. Well, those are the quality, best companies in the sector, and when you see them do a double like that, it usually indicates that the rest of the market's going to start to float. It hasn't happened so far. And matter of fact, we've seen some pullback lately in all of the stocks, even these higher quality companies. So if it doesn't happen here very soon, we're probably waiting till next year for the recovery. I'm still cautiously optimistic we'll still see it late this fall.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Greg. It was a pleasure, and look forward to having you back again soon.
Always good to be here.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.